Right now, there are chemical plants sitting on billions of dollars in silver they don't even count as precious metal. Defense contractors are hoarding it for missiles. AI companies need it to stop their $40,000 chips from melting. And somewhere in a warehouse, your old iPhone contains more valuable silver per ton than most actual silver mines. While everyone's watching the price ticker, a handful of obscure companies are quietly building empires on silver's industrial chokehold. Here's the thing nobody tells you. When silver spikes, the real winners aren't the miners. There are 5 types of assets so hidden in the supply chain that most investors don't even know they exist. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly which companies turn silver's pain into everyone else's profit, and why this might be the most asymmetric trade of the decade. Let's break down the Silver Shock Doctrine. Part 1. The Silver Shock Doctrine, why this metal controls hidden wealth pipelines. Let's get one thing straight. Silver isn't just shiny metal people hoard in vaults. It's the industrial nervous system of the modern world. We're talking plastics, solar panels, missile guidance systems, AI data centers, and the recycling facilities that tear apart your old electronics. Silver is embedded so deep into critical infrastructure that when its price moves, entire industries convulse. Here's the pattern that plays out every single commodity cycle, and somehow investors keep missing it. When a raw material spikes, everyone rushes to buy mining stocks. Copper goes up by copper miners, oil surges by oil drillers, silver rallies by silver miners. It's intuitive, it's obvious, and it's often wrong. Because the real money doesn't flow to the companies digging stuff out of the ground. It flows to the second-order players, the ones who control the choke points, the refiners, the manufacturers who've already stockpiled the material, the recyclers who can suddenly make your trash more valuable than ore. These are the asymmetric plays, the hidden leverage points where a 10% move in silver prices can translate to a 50% move in company valuations. Think about it forensically. When silver was $20 an ounce, certain industrial processes were just routine operating expenses. Chemical plants used silver catalysts, recycled them, moved on. Solar manufacturers bought silver paste, installed it in panels, sold the modules. Defense contractors spec'd silver-zinc batteries into missile systems because they needed the performance. AI companies coated their heat sinks with silver because nothing else conducts heat as well. But when silver hits $80, $90, $100 per ounce, everything changes. Suddenly that spent catalyst sitting in a chemical plant's warehouse isn't just industrial waste waiting for recycling, it's a precious metal vault. That silver paste isn't just a manufacturing input, it's a cost-plus pricing lever that paste suppliers can ride straight to margin expansion. Those batteries aren't commodities, they're strategic assets in a performance-at-any-cost procurement environment. And those heat sinks? They're protecting chips worth more than luxury cars. This is what I call embedded silver leverage. It's silver that's already working inside industrial systems, creating hidden balance sheet effects that accountants classify as inventory or operating costs, not strategic precious metal positions. The companies controlling these silver flows don't get tracked by commodity analysts. They're buried in chemical sector reports, renewable energy research, defense contractor summaries, data center infrastructure white papers, and that's exactly why they're so powerful. The structural setup is perfect. On the supply side, silver mining is constrained. You can't just flip a switch and double output. New mines take years to develop. Existing mines are dealing with declining ore grades. And here's the kicker. Most silver comes as a byproduct of other mining operations. It's not even the primary target, so supply is sticky, inflexible. Meanwhile, demand is exploding across multiple vectors simultaneously. The energy transition needs silver for solar. The AI revolution needs it for thermal management. Defense modernization needs it for advanced batteries. The circular economy needs it for urban mining and e-waste recycling. And traditional industrial uses like chemical catalysts. They're not going anywhere. This creates a vice. Supply can't expand quickly. Demand keeps accelerating. Prices rise. And when prices rise, the value equation flips for everyone holding silver in their supply chains. Here's the central thesis. And pay attention because this is where the money is. There are 5 categories of obscure assets that will rise when silver rises, potentially even more than silver itself. These aren't mining companies. They're industrial players sitting at critical choke points where silver's price surge translates into balance sheet appreciation, pricing power, strategic positioning, and margin expansion. We're going to walk through each one. chemical giants with catalyst inventories, solar paste suppliers riding a cost-plus model, defense contractors stockpiling silver-zinc batteries, AI infrastructure companies protecting the digital economy, and urban miners turning trash into treasure at grades that beat underground deposits. The common thread: silver is transitioning from commodity to geopolitical infrastructure metal. It's becoming a strategic resource, like rare earths or semiconductor-grade silicon. And the companies controlling the industrial choke points, the recycling loops, the specialty formulations, the thermal management systems, they're the ones positioned to capture value as this transition unfolds. The narrative arc is simple. Silver's price surge creates hidden balance sheet effects across industrial sectors, which trigger bottlenecks in critical supply chains, which cascade into cost pressures that ripple through consumer goods, energy systems, defense budgets, and technology access. Most people see a commodity chart. What they're missing is a systemic transformation that's already underway. Let's start with the most hidden play of all, the Catalyst Kings. Part 2, the Catalyst Kings, how chemical giants quietly hoard tons of silver. Here's a fact that should blow your mind. There are chemical plants right now sitting on literal tons of silver, and it doesn't show up on their balance sheets as precious metal holdings. It's classified as spent catalyst inventory waiting for recycling. But make no mistake, when silver prices climb, these industrial facilities become quasi-precious metal vaults disguised as polyester factories. Let me explain the silver loop because this is where it gets interesting. Ethylene oxide, EO for short, is one of those chemicals you've never heard of but absolutely cannot live without. It's the base chemical for polyester fabrics, PET plastic bottles, antifreeze in your car, detergents, pharmaceuticals, and a bunch of other stuff that makes modern life possible. Global production is massive. We're talking tens of millions of tons per year. And here's the thing. There is only one effective catalyst for producing ethylene oxide at industrial scale. Silver. Not platinum, not palladium, not some cheaper alternative. Silver is chemically unique for this reaction. You cannot make EO without it. So every major chemical company running EO production, BASF, Shell, Dow, and others, has to load their reactors with silver-based catalysts. These catalysts are incredibly valuable, obviously, but they don't last forever. Over time, they degrade, lose selectivity, need to be replaced. And when that happens, the spent catalyst doesn't get thrown away. It gets sent back to refiners who extract the silver, purify it, and either return it to the chemical company or sell it back into the market. This creates what insiders call the silver loop. Chemical companies buy fresh catalyst, use it for months or years, accumulate spent catalyst inventory, send it for recycling, recover the silver, and repeat. It's a closed system, a precious metal circulation pipeline embedded inside the industrial chemical sector. Now here's where the forensic insight kicks in. When silver is trading at $30 an ounce, that spent catalyst inventory is worth X. But when silver hits $80, $90, $100 per ounce, that same inventory is suddenly worth 3 times as much. The chemical company didn't do anything. They didn't increase production. They didn't optimize their process. The silver just sitting in their warehouse waiting for recycling became dramatically more valuable. And because this silver is tied up in an industrial process, it's not counted as a precious metal position. It's operating inventory. Most analysts don't even think about it. But the companies themselves, they know exactly what they're holding. The numbers back this up. The global EO silver catalyst market is projected to reach $1.5 billion in 2025. That's not the value of EO itself, that's just the catalyst market. And as silver prices rise, that number inflates automatically. Let's talk key players, because this isn't theoretical. BASF, one of the world's largest chemical companies, recently updated its capital strategy to focus more heavily on the EO value chain. They're commissioning new production startups in 2025 and 2026, specifically designed to deliver earnings growth from this sector. They're not stupid. They see the leverage. Shell and Dow are leading research and development into high-selectivity catalysts. The goal is to minimize byproducts while maximizing the efficiency of these silver-heavy reactions. Translation: they're trying to squeeze more value out of every ounce of silver they use, which becomes even more critical as prices rise. Better catalyst efficiency means better economics, which means better margins, which means higher valuations. But here's the darker angle. Industries dependent on EO are about to get hammered. If you're a manufacturer buying ethylene oxide as a raw material for your polyester or plastics, and the producer's catalyst costs just tripled because of silver prices, guess what happens to your input costs? They go up. And those costs cascade into consumer goods. Your clothing gets more expensive, your bottled water gets more expensive, your antifreeze gets more expensive. The chemical giants with catalyst inventories are insulated. They're actually benefiting from the price surge through balance sheet appreciation and potential pricing power. But everyone downstream? They're absorbing the shock. This is the first asymmetric play. Chemical companies with embedded silver catalyst positions. They're not mining silver. They're not even buying it speculatively. They're just sitting on industrial inventories that automatically appreciate as silver climbs. It's passive leverage. And most investors have no idea it exists. Now let's talk about the sector where silver dependency is even more extreme, solar energy. Part 3. Solar's silver addiction, the pace suppliers. Nobody talks about solar panels are supposed to save the planet, right? Clean energy, renewable future, all that good stuff. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The global solar industry is running on a silver addiction that's about to get very, very expensive. And while solar manufacturers are sweating over margins, there's a group of specialty chemical companies quietly printing money from the chaos. Let me introduce you to photovoltaic paste. This is the conductive silver paste that acts as the nervous system of every solar cell. It's the material that collects and transports the electrical current generated when sunlight hits the silicon. Without this paste, solar panels are just expensive glass and metal that do nothing. And yes, it's made with silver. Lots of silver. Here's the beautiful part if you're a paste supplier. Solar manufacturers are under brutal margin pressure. They're competing on price, dealing with overcapacity, fighting Chinese dominance, trying to scale production while costs keep rising. When silver prices spike, their input costs explode, and they can't always pass those costs on to customers because the market is so competitive. But the paste suppliers, they operate on a cost-plus model, meaning they charge the solar manufacturer the cost of materials, including silver, plus a markup. When silver goes from $30 to $80 per ounce, the paste supplier's revenue automatically increases. They're not absorbing the silver price risk. They're passing it through and taking a percentage on top. It's a structural arbitrage. The solar manufacturer bears the commodity risk. The paste supplier captures the margin. And it gets worse, or better, depending on which side you're on. Next-generation solar technologies like TOPCon and heterojunction cells, which are higher efficiency and becoming the industry standard, require 30 to 50% more silver than traditional panels. So as the industry upgrades to better technology, silver consumption per panel is actually increasing. By late 2025, silver spot prices reached $84 per ounce. At that level, silver became the single largest cost component in photovoltaic manufacturing, accounting for roughly 17% of total module costs. Think about that. Not silicon, not glass, not aluminum frames, silver. A single input representing nearly a fifth of the entire cost structure. The key players here are specialty chemical firms you've probably never heard of. Nippon Shokubai and Daikin are two Japanese companies providing the proprietary nano-silver formulations required for high-efficiency cells. These aren't commodity chemicals. This is advanced materials science, precise particle sizes, specific dispersion characteristics, carefully controlled rheology. You can't just buy silver paste off the shelf and slap it on a solar cell. You need these guys. And because the technology is proprietary and the switching costs are high, solar manufacturers can't just change paste suppliers without requalifying their entire production line. These companies have real pricing power. Now, the industry isn't stupid. They see the problem. So there's a market pivot happening. Suppliers like DKEM and Suzhou Goodmark are now volume producing what they call low silver pastes, with 20 to 40% silver content instead of the traditional higher concentrations. The goal is to help manufacturers manage the extreme metal volatility while keeping performance high. But here's the thing, even low silver paste still contains silver. And as long as silver prices keep climbing, the paste suppliers keep benefiting from the cost-plus model. They're selling less silver per unit, sure, but they're selling it at much higher prices. The math still works in their favor. From a forensic capital flow perspective, this is brilliant. Paste suppliers are sitting at a choke point in the energy transition. Solar deployment has to accelerate to meet climate goals. Governments are subsidizing it. Corporations are mandating it. Utilities are building it. Demand for solar is essentially locked in by policy and long-term contracts. But the supply chain has a silver bottleneck, and the companies controlling that bottleneck, the PACE suppliers, can extract value from every panel that gets manufactured. The humanitarian angle here is real, by the way. Rising silver prices flow through to solar module costs, which flow through to electricity prices in developing economies that are trying to leapfrog fossil fuels with solar deployment. When solar gets more expensive because of commodity inflation, energy access becomes harder for the people who need it most. The green energy transition becomes hostage to precious metal supply dynamics. But if you're investing, you're looking at the PACE suppliers, not the panel manufacturers, not the installers, the specialty chemical companies that turn silver into the technological paste that makes solar cells work. They're the second asymmetric play. Now let's get into something even more strategic. Missiles and moon missions. Part 4. Missiles and moon missions. Silver batteries in the new arms and space race forget lithium for a second. Yeah, lithium-ion batteries are everywhere. Your phone, your laptop, electric vehicles. But when you absolutely, positively cannot afford a battery failure because lives depend on it, or because you're operating in an environment where replacement is impossible, you use silver zinc. Silver zinc batteries offer significantly higher energy density than lithium-ion. They're also safer, less prone to thermal runaway, fires, explosions, and they perform reliably in extreme conditions, deep underwater, in space, inside missile guidance systems where a battery failure means mission failure. This isn't consumer tech. This is mission-critical performance at any cost infrastructure. And here's the kicker. Silver zinc battery technology is now critical for 85% of US missile platforms. We're talking Tomahawk cruise missiles, SM-series interceptors, advanced air-to-air munitions. The Pentagon doesn't use silver zinc batteries because they're cheap. They use them because they work when everything else fails. NASA uses them for the same reason. Deep-sea submersibles use them. Anywhere you need absolute reliability and high power density in a compact form factor, silver zinc is the answer. Now, what happens when silver prices spike? Does the Defense Department say, "Oh, silver's expensive now, let's redesign all our missile systems to use cheaper batteries"? Of course not. They're locked in, the technology is qualified, the supply chains are established, the performance requirements haven't changed. They're going to keep buying silver zinc batteries regardless of cost. This creates a performance at any cost procurement environment. And the companies supplying these batteries, they're not worried about demand destruction. They're worried about keeping up with demand. Eagle Pitcher Technologies is one of the main players here. They're expanding rapidly, with a new 20,000 square foot manufacturing facility in Kansas, scheduled to start operations by summer 2026, specifically to meet surging defense demand. That's not speculative capacity. That's contracted backlog driving real capital investment. Enesys is another major supplier benefiting from what insiders call the stockpiling trend in aerospace and defense sectors. When geopolitical tensions rise, and let's be honest, they are rising, governments start building inventory buffers for critical components. Silver zinc batteries are on that list. The forensic insight here is that defense spending creates a feedback loop. As silver prices rise, the batteries get more expensive, but procurement continues because national security doesn't negotiate on cost. The battery manufacturers capture the margin, and their valuations increase because they're selling into an inelastic demand environment backed by government budgets. But there's a darker layer. The more silver gets absorbed into defense stockpiling, the less is available for civilian applications. You're seeing a crowding out effect where military demand competes with industrial demand, which pushes prices higher, which increases the value of existing stockpiles, which incentivizes more hoarding. It's a spiral. And it has humanitarian implications. When defense budgets prioritize stockpiling strategic materials like silver, that's capital that could have gone to infrastructure, healthcare, education. There's an opportunity cost to militarization, and it plays out in resource allocation. But if you're looking at this through an investment lens, silver zinc battery manufacturers are the third asymmetric play. They have locked in customers with deep pockets and inelastic demand. As silver rises, their products become more valuable, not less. And unlike lithium-ion battery makers who are in a brutal race to the bottom on cost, silver zinc suppliers are operating in a niche where performance trumps price every single time. Which brings us to the sector that might be the most systemically important of all, artificial intelligence. Part 5. AI's hidden silver veins, cooling the machines that rule the future. Here's a fun fact: silver has the highest thermal conductivity of any metal on Earth. Higher than copper, higher than gold, higher than anything. Which means when you need to move heat away from something really fast, silver is your best option. And right now, nothing generates heat quite like artificial intelligence. Modern AI chips, Nvidia's H100, the new B200 series, Google's TPUs, custom silicon from Meta and Microsoft, these things are insane. They're packing hundreds of billions of transistors running at extreme speeds, burning through hundreds of watts of power, generating thermal loads that would literally melt the chip if you didn't cool it aggressively. We're talking about $40,000 chips, each, in data centers with thousands of them running simultaneously. The economic value at risk from thermal failure is staggering. So what do? You coat your heat sinks with silver. You use silver-based thermal interface materials. You integrate silver into liquid cooling systems. Because when you're protecting a $40,000 component, spending extra on silver-enhanced cooling is a no-brainer. The infrastructure protecting these AI chips becomes more valuable as silver becomes more expensive. Think about it. If you've already installed a data center with silver-enhanced thermal management and silver prices triple, you're sitting on an appreciating asset. Your cooling infrastructure is now worth more, and competing data centers trying to build new capacity have to pay the higher silver prices. It's a first-mover advantage encoded in precious metal. AI compute platforms are pushing rack densities beyond 300 kilowatts. For context, a traditional data center rack might be 5 to 10 kilowatts. 300 kilowatts is a completely different thermal environment. You can't use air cooling at those densities. The physics don't work. You have to go to liquid cooling, direct-to-chip cooling, immersion cooling, advanced thermal management that relies heavily on materials with the best possible thermal properties, which means silver. Vertiv is one of the major players here. They recently unveiled something called the Cool Chip Fluid Network, an 800-volt DC architectures at the 2025 OCP Global Summit. This is purpose-built infrastructure designed to solve thermal bottlenecks in next-generation AI data centers. And yes, it uses silver-enhanced components throughout the thermal pathway. Belimo is another specialist in precision thermal cooling components, required to manage extreme high-density heat. They make the valves, the actuators, the control systems that regulate coolant flow in these advanced liquid cooling setups. As AI data centers scale, demand for this precision equipment scales with it. The forensic insight is that AI infrastructure is becoming a silver-backed critical asset class. Data centers aren't just buildings with servers anymore. They're precision-engineered thermal management facilities where the cooling system is as important as the compute itself. And that cooling system is increasingly dependent on silver. What's the systemic risk? If silver scarcity starts throttling AI infrastructure build-out, you've got a choke point on the digital economy. AI isn't optional anymore. It's embedded in search, recommendation systems, autonomous vehicles, drug discovery, financial modeling, scientific research. If the cost of cooling AI chips becomes prohibitive because silver is too expensive, that slows AI deployment, which slows economic productivity growth. And the humanitarian dimension? AI cost inflation affects access. If AI-driven healthcare diagnostics become more expensive because the infrastructure costs more to build, that's fewer people getting access to cutting-edge medical technology. If AI-powered educational tools cost more to deploy, that's developing countries falling further behind in the AI-driven economy. But again, investment perspective. Thermal management companies serving AI infrastructure are the fourth asymmetric play. They're selling into a market with exponential demand growth, inelastic need for performance, and increasing dependency on silver as a core material. As silver rises, their infrastructure becomes more valuable and harder to replicate. Which brings us to the final, and perhaps most revolutionary play, urban mining. Part 6. Trash to treasure. Urban mining and the silver scrap economy. Here's where things get wild. At silver prices of $80 to $100 per ounce, the silver content in urban waste, old circuit boards, discarded solar panels, junked electronics, becomes higher grade than many underground silver mines. Let that sink in. Your trash is richer in silver than actual ore bodies that mining companies spend billions developing. This is the rise of urban mining. And it's not just an environmental feel-good story, it's a fundamental restructuring of global supply chains. Traditional silver mining has geological risk. You drill exploratory holes, hope you find something, build a mine, hope the ore grade holds up, hope you don't hit water or structural problems, hope commodity prices stay high enough to justify extraction. It's capital-intensive, time-consuming and uncertain. Urban mining has none of that. The ore body is already on the surface. It's sitting in landfills, recycling centers, warehouses full of obsolete electronics. The extraction technology exists. AI and machine learning are now being integrated into recycling facilities to improve the precision of silver recovery from complex scrap. You can sort materials faster, identify high-value components, optimize the refining process. The global e-waste recycling market is forecast to grow to $80.8 billion in 2025. That's not a niche. That's a massive industrial sector undergoing rapid professionalization and technological improvement. And as silver prices rise, the economics of urban mining improve dramatically. Suddenly, it makes sense to recover silver from materials that weren't worth processing before. Low-grade circuit boards, old connectors, thin film solar panels reaching end of life. All of it becomes feedstock. Umicore is a leader in what they call precious metals refining. They're currently processing complex waste products, spent catalysts from chemical plants, electronic scrap from consumer devices, to recover silver and platinum group metals. These aren't just recyclers. They're sophisticated industrial operations with proprietary refining technology that can extract value from materials most companies would throw away. Veolia is a global player leveraging stringent environmental regulations to mandate formal e-waste management and silver recovery. As governments crack down on informal recycling, the backyard operations that burn circuit boards to recover metal, causing massive pollution and health problems, the business shifts to regulated facilities. Veolia operates those facilities. They're positioned to capture that transition. The forensic insight is that urban mining removes geological risk. You're not betting on exploration success or commodity price cycles aligning with mine development timelines. You're processing existing material streams that grow automatically as the world upgrades its electronics. But there's a humanitarian stakes dimension here that's critical. Informal recycling sectors in developing countries, places where people manually dismantle electronics, often in dangerous conditions, burning plastic to get at the metal, these informal operations employ millions of people. As the industry formalizes and moves to high-tech facilities, what happens to those workers? It's a classic disruption story. Technological progress and environmental regulation improve outcomes on aggregate, but create concentrated losses for vulnerable populations who depend on informal economies. The shift to regulated e-waste management is probably necessary from a pollution and safety standpoint, but it's also displacing labor and concentrating capital in the hands of large industrial players like Umicore and Veolia. And then there's the geopolitical angle. If silver supply increasingly comes from urban mining rather than traditional mines, the geography of production shifts. It's no longer about who has ore deposits, it's about who has the most electronic waste and the best recycling infrastructure. Rich countries with high rates of electronics consumption and sophisticated waste management suddenly become silver producers without ever operating a mine. This is the circular economy backbone taking shape. Silver becomes a material that flows through industrial systems, gets embedded in products, gets recovered at end of life, gets refined and reused. It's a closed loop, and the companies controlling the refining and recovery process are capturing value at every cycle. Urban mining and e-waste refiners are the fifth asymmetric play. They're turning trash into treasure at grades that compete with underground mines, and they're doing it without the geological risk, the permitting headaches, or the multi-year development timelines. So let's bring this home. Okay, let's synthesize. We've walked through 5 categories of obscure assets that most investors completely miss when they think about silver exposure. Chemical giants sitting on catalyst inventories that appreciate as silver climbs. Solar paste suppliers riding a cost-plus model that insulates them from commodity risk. Defense contractors stockpiling silver-zinc batteries for mission-critical applications. AI infrastructure companies protecting $40,000 chips with silver-enhanced thermal management, and urban miners processing e-waste at grades that beat traditional ore bodies. None of these are silver miners, and that's the point. When silver prices spike, mining companies benefit, sure, but they also face rising costs, energy, labor, permitting, equipment. Their margins expand, but they're still digging metal out of the ground at increasing difficulty. The embedded leverage is limited. The 5 plays we've covered have a different dynamic. They're sitting at industrial choke points where silver is already working inside critical systems, chemical catalysts that create a precious metal loop, specialty pastes that operate on cost-plus pricing, batteries with inelastic government demand, thermal management protecting exponentially growing AI infrastructure, recycling operations that turn trash into treasure. These aren't commodity plays. They're structural positions in supply chains where silver scarcity translates directly into pricing power, balance sheet appreciation, and strategic value. And here's the systemic risk that ties it all together. Silver is transitioning from commodity to critical infrastructure metal. It's no longer just about jewelry and coins and industrial uses that can be substituted if prices get too high. We're talking about technologies, solar energy, AI, advanced defense systems, chemical production, that literally cannot function without silver or would require complete redesigns that take years and billions of dollars to implement. When a material becomes that embedded in critical infrastructure, supply bottlenecks trigger cascading effects. If silver prices keep rising, you get inflationary pressure across plastics manufacturing, renewable energy deployment, defense procurement, and digital infrastructure build-out. Those costs ripple into consumer goods, electricity prices, military budgets, and access to cutting-edge technology. The humanitarian angle is real. Rising costs hit developing economies disproportionately. If solar gets more expensive because of silver, energy transition in Africa and Southeast Asia slows down. If AI infrastructure costs inflate, the digital divide widens. If defense spending absorbs more silver, that's less capital for social programs. But from an investment standpoint, the thesis is clear. The true silver bull market isn't in bullion. It's not even primarily in mining stocks. It's in the industrial choke points nobody's tracking. The catalyst recyclers, the paste suppliers, the battery manufacturers, the thermal management specialists, the urban miners. These are the companies that win when everyone else panics about silver scarcity. They're not hoping for higher prices. They're structurally positioned to benefit from them. They have embedded leverage that automatically activates as silver climbs. And most importantly, they're hidden in plain sight, misclassified by analysts who don't understand how industrial silver flows work. So if you're looking at silver exposure, don't just buy the miners. Look for the second-order plays, the companies sitting on catalyst inventories, the specialty chemical suppliers with cost-plus models, the defense contractors with locked-in customers, the data center infrastructure providers, the e-waste refiners turning trash into precious metal. These are the assets that rise with silver, the ones you haven't heard of, the shadow empire that wins when the commodity everyone's watching finally breaks out. And here's your ominous hook for what comes next. Silver isn't the only industrial metal entering a supply crisis. We're heading into a geopolitical scramble for the materials that power modern civilization: rare earths, lithium, cobalt, graphite, the whole suite. The playbook is the same. Find the choke points, ignore the miners, follow the embedded leverage. That's a story for another time, but now you know how to see it.